So in this video, we're going to look at how we can combine kick, toms and bass in a mix, especially when they have a lot of low frequency content and there is some frequency clashes which is eating up the overall headroom. And I'm going to quickly start by just showing you what we have in the project. So I've got a 4/4 kick, we have a Moog, sub 37 bass again, and we also have a nice tom loop. And even though these all kind of fit together quite nicely anyway, we could definitely improve the overall mix by creating some room for each of those elements. I'm going to quickly just let you have a listen to this. So I don't know if you could hear that, but the toms are actually masked a little bit by the legato bass, and the toms and the bass, the kick and the bass also have sub-frequency content that hit at the same time. So we need to start by carving out some room there. And we're just going to stop the toms and we're just going to work on the bass with the kick first. And the way that I like to do this is by copying over the bass channel. And we'll call this one sub and this one bass, and we're going to use an EQ. Again, you can use any EQ you want. I prefer to use the DMG equality, and we'll do this for around 120 hertz at 24 dB. And for the bass one, we'll do the same again, but we'll go the opposite way. So 120 hertz and 24 dB. So what that effectively is doing is the sub one is just under 120 hertz and the bass one is above 120 hertz. So we've just split them up so we can work on them separately. And the sub one, we're just going to sidechain that to the kick. Just by using Ableton's compressor. So if you click on this one here, you can take the audio from the kick, and we're going to leave the attack around 2 and the release we're going to bring down a little bit. And you can play around with the release to get different grooves. So basically, if we have it quite low, it means that it's taking the shape of the kick waveform, but if we add more release, then it's taking the shape of the kick, but then it's tailing off a little bit longer, the gain reduction. And another thing to note, which I like to play around with, is the look ahead. So with the look ahead, I usually set it to 10 milliseconds, and that means that the compressor will be a lot more sharper. It means that it's looking out for the kick before the kick actually happens. The only thing I will say about this is I wouldn't tend to use it at this stage when you're just starting to create the track. I would use it at the later stages, the mixing stage, because if you have hardware in your studio and you're recording things in, using the look ahead is going to create 1 millisecond or 10 milliseconds worth of latency, which you don't really want, because it means that the play-in is not, you already have latency with Ableton anyway, so the play-in is going to be much more delayed and it's just not going to be as easy to record stuff in. So yeah, for this purpose, we're just going to leave it at 0 milliseconds, and I'll let you have a quick listen to the sub now, and I'll bring down the threshold. So that's pumping quite nicely, and the main reason why I do this by splitting up the frequencies instead of just sidechaining the whole clip is because I don't necessarily always want that pumping sound. I want the benefits of the pumping, which is that it will push the sub-frequencies out of the way to let the kick through, but I don't want it over the whole sound. And doing it this way gives you a much transparent result, I think. And so I'll play the sub and the bass and the kick together now. So as you can hear, it's a much more transparent sound rather than sidechaining the whole thing. And one thing I do like to do when doing this trick is on the group master, if we just go in and add in 100 hertz, or 120 hertz, just by a dB or two. And that's just basically to replace the volume that we've kind of dipped out when we bring both of the filters together. We have a little bit of a dip around 120 hertz. So yeah, that's just kind of rebalanced that for us. And another thing I'm going to do is I've got a repeater on my returner, and also I've got the Verb Suite plugin as well, and we'll just turn the width up on that. Just give the sound a little bit more width and a little bit more excitement. So in this next section, I would like to show you how I would start to bring in the toms, and how I would sculpt some room in the bass channel, in the bass group, for the toms to push through the mix. And so to do this, I like to use the Isotope Neutron 2 plugin. And there's a couple of reasons why this is such a cool plugin. The two reasons is that you've got a masking feature here, and what that does is you can put this on every channel, and the masking feature will show you visually which frequencies are clashing. So if I just press play now, I've set this up to the bass channel already, just through this drop down menu. You'll see build up here. So we can see we've got problems in this area, which is probably where the fundamentals are sitting for the toms. And what we need to do next is we need to find out what those frequencies are. So if I just solo the tom channel, go over to my master channel where I've got a Pro Q2 set up. I'm just going to play it, and I'm just going to scroll down and see what frequencies the toms are hitting at. So I actually did this earlier, and it was 75 hertz and 104 hertz. I just thought I'd do that again just to demonstrate how I would go about that. So yeah, what we're going to do is there's two things that we're going to do. We're going to go over to the bass channel. We're going to open Neutron 2 up, and we're going to set, which I've already done earlier too, but we're going to set the first node and the second node to those frequencies. So I've got 104 hertz at the bottom, and I've got 76 hertz. And what we're going to do next is, that will become more apparent later when I show you why I did that. So we need to set up a sidechain channel, which is going to sidechain those EQ frequency bands. So if we go to the tom channel, duplicate this, and call this tom SC for sidechain, and we're going to send the audio of this channel to the bass group. And if I solo this now, when I press play, you'll notice we get a readout on the meter, but there's no audio, because it's just sending the audio directly to Neutron in the bass channel. And if we unsolo this now, what we're going to do is we're going to, actually there's one more step, sorry. In the Neutron plugin on the sidechain channel, we need to set these two nodes also to the same nodes that we did here on the bass one. And if I bring up show, we're just going to dial them in. So 75 for node 1, and 104 for node 2. Now we've done that, if we go back over to the bass channel, open up the Neutron plugin, and we're going to play around with this section here. So if we go to the first node, just make sure I clicked on that right, yep, and switch this button on, which is dynamic mode, which is respectively just a sidechain element of the plugin. And we're going to go to the sidechain section here, and we're going to click on external sidechain band 1. So that means when band 1 of the tom sidechain channel hits, it's going to affect the sidechain of band 1 of the bass EQ. So then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that to 2 as well, which is already set up. So we've got external band 2 there. And while this is playing, I'm going to start to bring down the gain reduction on both of these EQ nodes. And you'll see the gain reduction happening here. There's a visual representation. And I usually aim for like around -5, -6 dB. And I'll just start to bring that down, and you can have a listen to what that's doing. So there you go. So that's effectively sidechaining, not the whole bass sound, but just those pinpointed key areas which are causing the frequency clashes. And the reason why I do this is because I don't tend to always, like I said with the bass, that kind of pumping sound in the mix. I want it to be transparent. So there's a couple of my favorite tips and tricks when dealing with low-end content, and a transparent way that I like to use to keep the overall headroom down on the mix. And I would like to know, have you guys got any tips or ways of doing things that are a bit different to this one? Have you got any plugins that you like to use for these methods? If so, please leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, also add them to the comments too. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you next time.